Hello everybody and welcome back to the Kingdom Hearts HD Dream Drop Distance playthrough. We're now back with Riku and it's time to enter into his version of Country of the Musketeers. First off, obviously, I believe that we do need to do a little bit of a party change, because there's not really a whole lot we need to do, and we want to be levelling up other Dream Eater's commands at this point. And also, I feel like I've changed the colour of Joanne at this point. I think I might have cut out using one of the training toys. Basically, it just allows you to change the colour of your Dream Eaters, so you can make them any colour you like. Annoyingly, that does sometimes just mean that they don't really look quite accurate, and I didn't realise you could do that with the menu. All this time playing Dream Drop Distance, I never realised that you could actually look at Sora's stuff as well, slash if you're with Sora Riku stuff. Clearly I'm completely balmy, but it is time for us to take on Brawlamari! And I can't remember if this is the second time we've fought him. I think it probably is. He's definitely quite challenging, actually, in this variant, if it isn't the first one. It's basically the same fight, it's just that, yeah, he really goes ham. It's the same with, I believe, Queen Buzzerfly, I think her name is. Because she's going to come back again to be delightfully irritating. And, oh, I was so close. I just slightly buggered it up. It's fine, I'll get it on this cycle. And then we'll move into the next phase. But we'll say, at least I knew a lot more about what I was actually doing this time for Brawlamari. I think there's still a moment where I got really confused. And it is in this phase, because basically what is going to happen is that he's going to do his giant I'm gonna murder you laser, but there's a whole bunch of rocks everywhere, and I remember having the same trouble when I first played Dream Drop Distance 6, I think I did, and my brain going, what the hell am I meant to do? Do I just hang back here? Do I attack the rocks? The answer is no, none of those things. All you need to do is just sit. Like, literally just sit behind a rock. Because they don't hurt you if you sit behind them, and once he's done his lasery stuff and the rocks break, you can then go in for the kill. So, yeah, it's not that complicated, but it took me a while to figure out. I think because, as you have seen, I am sometimes a little bit too reckless, I suppose, with my Kingdom Hearts game playing. And so I frequently just go in absolutely ham, when really I should be a little bit more careful, a little bit more thoughtful about exactly what I'm doing. So I'm pretty sure this is probably going to come out at a B rank dive. I'm fine if that is the case, because I mean, yeah, this is a pretty poor performance on my part, but don't worry, I will go back in and I will fix it. I will show you what a good A/gold rank dive looks like. But yeah, this final particular attack is definitely a lot more dangerous than any of those, because the rocks move, because of course they do. So you just got to follow the rock in order to not get hit, and if you don't get hit, then you can go for that final attack. Nice and simple, but also you may be thinking, oh god, I'm spending ages on this, it just means that the rest of blooming Country of Musketeers is going to take forever. Actually no. Funnily enough, as with some of Riku's other worlds, we are going to complete Country of the Musketeers for Riku in this very part. So we get a nice 35-minute part that's actually an entire world, rather than like two 35-minute parts taking up one trip to a world. It's is that whole thing frequently Riku's just end up taking less time. I don't know whether it's yeah, definitely be. I don't know if it's because I just spend more time fannying around getting used to the world with Sora, and then by the time I get to Riku I'm just moving a lot faster. I don't know whether that's it, but could be blooming anything.
Isn't that Pete? What kind of world did I end up in this time?
So yes, Riku basically just spends the entirety of his time in Country of the Musketeers in the opera.
Well, one thing's for sure. That guy adds up to trouble in any world.
And he's definitely not wrong on that fact. So you may think, oh, this is going to be a little bit dull. No, actually it's quite a fun version of Country of the Musketeers. For starters, you know, it's going to explain that disappearing box. I mean, really, it needs to, because otherwise that would be really confusing for Sora to be just like, Riku saved us! And it wasn't Riku who saved it. That would be weird. But, yes, we'll get that explanation, but other things will be fun. And I suppose, sort of, while we're rolling around through this world again, it's probably a somewhat decent-ish time to talk about one of the things that definitely got raised during Dream Drop Distance's release, and that was actually Haley Joel Osment's voice acting. So basically, if you think about his when he recorded the voice acting for certain bits and bobs, obviously he's aged as he's gone along. In 2002, he was 14. So he was quite young, was Haley Joel Osment, when he he first played Sora. And please, for the love of God, get in a Kiraga right the hell now, mate, because otherwise that beating is gonna just... Oh, thank God for that. Yeah, so obviously quite young, yeah, that very sort of high-pitched, squeaky voice. And then, not long after that, he did Kingdom Hearts 2. I mean, it was 4 years later, so obviously his voice dropped. But he still had sort of a relatively sort of high-ish pitched voice, which he managed to maintain through the stuff that he did in Rechain of Memories. But then he didn't really have any Sora lines in 3 for 2 days, so he didn't really do anything there. He didn't really have any Sora lines either in Birth by Sleep. He had some towards the end, but nothing sort of major. He was mostly doing Vanitas. So then it wasn't until Recoded where he had any kind of Sora lines again. But once again, when Recoded came out, it was mostly text-based, so there wasn't any sort of major vocal work going on. So it was... I don't think anybody really picked up on it. But then Dream Drop Distance came along, and we're talking 6 years after Kingdom Hearts 2. So, which is about 6 years ago now, oh god. So, Haley Joel Osment was about 24, so how old I am now. And obviously as you get older, your voice does deepen. Like, you listen to my voice now, I would say that it's probably even deeper than it was when I was at university, which isn't that long ago. I mean, I go on about it, and if you think by this point you'd know I went to university. But yeah, it's a lot deeper. And so obviously, when you're trying to maintain the age of a character, because ultimately Sora didn't age that much between Kingdom Hearts 2 and Dream Drop Distance. But obviously Haley Joel Osment did. So what he ended up doing was he ends up putting on this sort of, trying to go for a slightly higher register voice with Sora to try and replicate how he sounded in Kingdom Hearts 2, and it just comes across as being sort of just that little bit forced, I suppose. And this is not saying that Haley Joel Osment does a bad job in this game. He does a really good job. I really like it. I think it is great. But there is just something that sounds slightly off about it. But when you consider that this was really the first major amount of voice work that Haley Joel Osment had to do for Sora in about 6 years, you kind of then have to think, well, obviously there's a point of getting used to the voice again. Because I mean, it's basically his voice, but slightly higher register anyway. But getting used to that again after not doing it properly for a while. There is also the whole question of voice director, because different voice directors get different sounds out of people. I believe I mentioned this before, and I'll mention it again. The Kid Icarus Uprising anime shorts. So all of them had the voice actors from the game do the voice acting, which is a great touch actually. I really like that. But that said, all of the dubs have a very different sound with the characters. Like, even though they're all the same actors, some of them sound completely different. And so you're just like, wait, that voice for that character is the same person? You're joking. It is actually the same person. So a voice director can do really kind of strange things in terms of changing up how someone's vocal performance ends up sounding. So with Dream Drop Distance, it's a case that I think, was it an issue of Haley Joel Osment having to kind of settle back into the Sora voice, or was it just the voice director going, yep, that's the take? It's difficult to tell. But with all that said, everything that I've heard from the Kingdom Hearts 3 trailer so far feels much more as, I suppose, it should have been. Like, it feels much more natural. I think that if Dream Drop Distance wasn't a voice director issue that caused Haley Joel Osment Sora sounding a little bit weird, then probably the fact that Kingdom Hearts 3 is a much bigger game, from what I can tell, in terms of voice acting than Dream Drop Distance. I think that ultimately means that obviously Haley Joel Osment had more time to sort of settle back in to the role, and also he had done kind of more recent work, because he did the extra sort of vocal stuff in the 2.5 remix stuff, which was about 2 years after Dream Drop Distance. He also did the stuff in 2.8 Final Chapter Prologue, which I think the end of that one also sounded a bit weird, so it's probably vocal director side of things, but it's still useful to refer to, because I remember it being one of my slight niggles with the game, that it just sort of, that side of things didn't quite sit quite as well as it perhaps should have done. But that is all okay, because we are heading right on to the stage. I wonder what wonderful opera we're going to see tonight.
What's all this for? Is that supposed to be Mickey and the others? Yeesh. Those three are together even when they're made out of wood. Pete.
So yeah, they scarpered, but it's okay because we'll chase after them. We're going to spend the majority of Riku's trip chasing after them. It's a little bit disappointing, I suppose, after we had the delight of kind of fully following the story of the film in Sora's version to then the version that we get here, which is just not following the story at all. It's just sort of a side narrative, I suppose. Which makes sense, but it does introduce something that would have... I love how that aura line got stuck, that's great. It does bring up the question of what could they have done with the whole dual world setup. Because I mentioned it in the grid that they were going to have the grid be Riku's version and Sora visit Space Paranoids, which I think would have been really cool setup. Then obviously in terms of Practice Paradise, they had Sora go through the Pleasure Island and Riku go through Monstro. Cool setup. On the whole, I think that had they seen that idea through to its conclusion, that would have been really cool and probably would have, I think, made Dream Drop Distance a better game than it does ultimately end up being. And once again, it's not to say it's a bad game, I really do actually quite like it, but I think that it would have helped elevate it a bit more, because your reaction to it would inevitably include sort of all those different looks at worlds that would just be really quite spectacular. Slash maybe just going to completely different worlds. I mean, it would ultimately not work in the context of where the story is going to go. But, like, it would have been cool for, say, Sora to visit La Cité de Cloche, and for Riku to visit, say, Atlantis. Obviously, I'm just pulling worlds out of thin air there for Atlantis, although I have to say I would actually quite like to see Atlantis in Kingdom Hearts at some point in the future. I think it is a world that could be quite stunning. Same with Treasure Planet. They're both Disney worlds that I think could do remarkably well. Also think that they are two worlds that, well, two films that probably could do well out of perhaps having a live-action remake rather than, you know, what we're getting. But anyway, look, it's a treasure chest. I wonder what's inside. Da-la-la-la-la-la-la-la-la-la-la. You got a mini!
Oh, thank you for saving me.
Where are you going?
I have to help the Musketeers.
What happened? Tell me what I can do.
Who are you?
Riku. Mickey's my friend.
Oh, Riku, the stage has been rigged with a machine to lure Mickey and the others into a terrible trap. If we could only find something to control the device from here.
Lucky I remembered. Look what I nearly forgot. Eh? Why is the box sans mouse?
Oi, quit messing around. The boss is losing his patience. Hey?
There it is! That's the gadget we need to retrieve.
I'm on it.
Release me! This instant!
Actually, it's time to say bon journey, Your Royal Highness.
Captain Pete, what is the meaning of this?
Oh, don't you lose any sleep over it, Princess. I'm just gonna seize the throne and rule happily ever after. After you name me king, that is.
What? I most certainly would never agree to that.
Bien sûr. And that's why the real you won't be the one doing the naming. I got myself another stooge to take the stage. All you gotta do is keep your royal mouth nice and shut.
A double? Mickey and the Musketeers will stop you.
Oh, never you fear, Princess. Those chowderheads will be out of the picture real soon. So, how are we looking, boys? Aye, okay, boss. Test run's done.
We'll flatten them like crepes.
Good. Now, you must hold on to that thing no matter what. If you don't mind, Your Highness, we have a seat reservated for you backstage. It's gonna be curtains soon. Curtains! I love it.
Oh!
How very unsightly. The monsters. But yes! So, basically the next 10 minutes or so before we actually get to the boss fight are going to be spent chasing after the Beagle Boys. So we start in delightful, poisonous, gassy area. We're basically exploring the entirety of the backstage areas of the Opera House, which is quite fun actually. I do always really like backstages of theatres. Once again, theatres, I talk about them a lot. Part of me wants to apologise, also part of me is just like, nah, I'm not ashamed of being an absolute major theatre nerd, so you're just going to have to sit there and enjoy it really, aren't you? But yeah, there's always sort of a tale to tell in the backstage areas of a world, well, backstage areas of a theatre, because there's always some incredible mystery. Also, you know, you have ghosts and mysteries and all sorts of stuff that can occur. I mean, my good old grand lady, the Theatre Royal Nottingham, she's got a couple of ghosts in there. I think the main one that we know of is, so she's called the Wronged Chambermaid. It's a really sad tale, actually. So she used to work at the hotel that used to sort of sit up on the side of the theatre, and so she was a chambermaid there, and she fell in love with one of the actors. I think clearly they had a little bit of hanky-panky, as we shall say, and yeah, she basically had a wonderful time, but then the actor left, as actors are wont to do, or at least were wont to do in that time frame. And she tried to find him, tried to get a message to him, but couldn't. And then she found out she were preggers. And obviously this was like in the 1800s or so. So obviously knowing how people reacted to single women who were preggers, she went up to one of the tallest rooms in the hotel, and unfortunately chose to end her life. So it's a really sad, tragic tale. And yeah, her ghost is said to haunt the halls and corridors of the Theatre Royal, because ultimately what ended up happening was that once the hotel was taken down, sort of some of the backstage areas of the theatre were extended into where that once was. Yeah, so that she walks the halls of the backstage areas. So that's sort of your good old classic, really tragic ghost story that's associated with the theatre. There's one which is not quite as impressive, which is of the Headless Horse, which I'm not quite sure where it came from, but I think it's due to a picture. So I don't know why that particular thing's not loading. I think I've got to get rid of all the Beagle Boys before we go. Anyway, yeah, so I believe it is purely down to a single picture of the outside of the theatre, where clearly, because of how it was taken, it's quite an old photograph, there appears to be a horse that is Son's head. And I think that ultimately led to sort of stories of the headless horse bringing a carriage round to the front of the theatre every so often and stuff. And then the one that actually doesn't really get mentioned in any sort of official literature, I suppose, but it's the one that people have definitely had experiences of, is a ghost called the Man in the Frock Coat. Don't really know who or what his story is, but what we do know is that he's been sighted sort of around the building, really. He seems quite threatening, I suppose, just sort of stalking the corridors, and yeah, just wears a long frock coat, and he's been seen by people who don't sort of necessarily, well, I wouldn't say are sort of the superstitious type. So yeah, so one of the particular sightings was one of my colleagues, and she was walking sort of down through the building and saw sort of this long black coat, and she just thought that it was one of her other colleagues who just at that time sort of happened to wear sort of a long black coat. She thought it was him, and sort of, so following him down, didn't say anything, it's just like, that's weird. But then, like, he ended up, like, the coat just sort of ended up disappearing, like, completely. Like, there was no way that it could have gotten that ahead of her. And, yeah, so that definitely creeped her out a little bit. And then another of my colleagues, at the time, she, a few years ago now, was sort of working in the office alone, and like there was nobody else there, and wow, that's quite a time to get stopped. And yeah, then she thought she saw someone pass down the corridor. Nobody done it, but she thought she'd seen somebody, and then she I think got back to work and then saw it again, and there was definitely nobody there at the time. And then I think pretty much from that point on, she didn't really work later into the night ever again, if she could help it, because it just freaked her the hell out. So yeah, so those are my kind of ghost stories that I know of from my lovely old theatre. But there are definitely other ghost stories from theatres. They're quite common, actually. And that got us through finding the Beagle Boys. So now it's time to try and, you know, stop the disaster from happening. But we've got a boss fight before then. This right here is the delight
Just never want to make this easy, do they?
that is Holy Moly. The pun. Battle theme is Untamable, and yeah, he's a bit of a pain, because as you can expect by the whole hole and teleporty type stuff, it doesn't also help that there's a lot of treasure chests located around here, so we are going to have to go try and pick them up. Probably not going to get all of them during this fight, but I'm going to do my best. Yeah, the idea is that you've got to go in, hit him as much as possible, and then peg it. You can use fly motion attacks to deal quick damage, and you can also use sort of warping attacks like Dark Aura or the Ghost Drive Duel Link to sort of get some good hits in. Ice Barrage is also quite useful apparently because it can strike the boss even in a distance. But what you really want to do is try and lock on to track where it goes. You can also tell in the little mini-map at the top, because obviously there'll be a bigger circle wherever he's located. I think also when he initially turns up, there was a slight kind of thing, like aura kind of dispersed out. Which was quite helpful. What you do need to be careful of though is that once half of its health has been depleted, then Holy Moly disappears and sends its hands through multiple warp holes to attack for a short period, which is quite deadly. Like that! That I could have sworn that I had deleted. Oh well! The only death you will see, in part, I suppose, because that's how you normally fight the delight that is Holy Moly. But I believe that what's actually going to happen here is I think I actually got Holy Moly into quite the loop. Because, yeah, I'm just going to sort of wail on him. And I think somehow, miraculously, I managed to hit him at just the moment where he would actually start to teleport and stopped him from teleporting. I don't know how this worked. I wish I could explain. But it took me a few attempts to get through this fight, and I certainly won't complain at that making itself a hell of a lot easier. So yeah, I think that's probably why I left that death in. Normally, it's never going to happen again, I can tell you that now. Yeah, surprisingly easy when it decides to not teleport all over the bloody shop. But yeah, that is the end of Riku's trip to the country of the Musketeers. We'll probably, pop back in to pick up all those missed chests. But yes, that is the story here, complete. Let's save the day and find out what the hell's going on everywhere else.
How do you like that?
What? Impossible.
Looks like I was right in the nick of time. Sora?
Oh, they're safe. Oh, thank goodness. You truly saved the day, Riku. I see you're as brave as a royal musketeer.
Musketeer? What is that anyway? Huh? They actually say that?
Of course. Every musketeer is taught those words. It's a very important motto and solemn pledge.
You're right. And it does fit the moment. All for one, and one for all.
I sensed something was amiss the moment Sora and Riku departed. Xehanort must have known what we were attempting before we even began.
But you do know where they are.
You must understand, this examination is in no way how the mark of mastery is usually found. However, in light of what they must do next, it was a necessity. If Sora and Riku complete their test, by finding the 7 doors corresponding to the 7 pure lights, they will return home with a new power. At that point, they will both be true masters. However, the dangers make this more trial than test.
But are they safe right now?
Considering their ability, I would like to believe that they are. However, all my attempts to locate Sora and Riku end questionably. Xehanort is a devious tactician. There is nothing we can do that he will not, to some extent, be able to predict.
So?
As you can see, the organization's members are complete people again. Xehanort will be no different. We cannot afford another moment's hesitation. We must consider any strategy to outwit Xehanort and catch him off guard. I must warn you again. The road will not be easy.
Fine. Let's jump right in.